So I'll get us started here with our final panel presentation, the sports communication discussion. My name is Keaton Mankey. I am a senior here at UND. I'm originally from West Fargo, North Dakota, and I am a comm major and also minoring in sports business. I'm currently an intern for the communication department and serving as one of our department campaign coordinators. I'm excited to be the moderator for our sports communication panel, and I thank you all for joining us. At this time, I would appreciate if the attendees that haven't yet introduced themselves could please do that in the chat box, just by including your full name and then your current affiliation, whether that be your current job, university, or high school. For our high school students and parents in attendance today, we'd like to remind you that there is a scholarship opportunity related to this event, and I'll send that out here in a minute in the chat box for you. Our annual Communication Appreciation Day event is sponsored by Northwestern Mutual. It's an incredible way to showcase our alumni within our communication department. It's also a great way for us to highlight the endless opportunities that exist for all of us students here in our UND communication major. So now it's time to meet our panel. We do like to remind you all that our panels today are composed of all UND communication department alumni, and we're very proud of the great successes that they have found. Presenting first will be Emily Zangari. She is a digital content and strategy director with the University of Connecticut, and she graduated in 2014. Presenting second will be Hunter Plant. He is the assistant marketing and communications director with the University of Minnesota Crookston, and he graduated in 2018. And then presenting third will be Peter Bottini. He is a social media marketing director with the National Hockey League and graduated in 2015. And if any of you in attendance have questions, please send them to myself or the entire group via the chat box. And we'll do our best to discuss those after our third presentation has finished up. So without further ado, I will have Emily get us started.
Thanks, Keaton. Hi, I'm Emily Zangari. As Keaton mentioned, I am a 2014 graduate of the University of North Dakota. I'm originally from Devils Lake, North Dakota, so not too far from home. Kind of got my start wanting to work in the sports industry, specifically hockey. So admittingly, I did choose my university based on a hockey program. My parents weren't as thrilled as I was, but it worked out. So it kind of all played out okay. But yeah, I am currently the director of digital content and strategy out in Connecticut, where I currently reside and live with my husband, 2 dogs, and we are actually expecting a baby in the fall. So I'd love to tell you a little bit about kind of where I got started and how that all worked out. Let's see. So when I was at UND, like I said, I was a 2014 comm major. I kind of took the PR advertising route, so definitely took more classes that were geared toward that. Spent a lot of time working in the athletic communications department, where Jason Hajdu was the PR guru at the time over there. Spent about 2.5 years over there learning and kind of absorbing everything, working mostly in PR, so doing all the different PR stuff, writing press releases, helping with the different directories. I was in charge of the softball team's PR information. So I was doing their social media. I was helping with writing their news for their website. I also was part of the UND Public Relations Office, so kind of working on magazine content. So I was also getting some writing skills and PR skills over there. And then I also worked at the sous shop while I was there, so had my hands kind of all over in everything. But I think one of my favorite things about UND was the fact that it allowed me to make such great connections. I can't speak enough, and it sounds cliche, but that's kind of where I'm going with my presentation today, is all about connections, and it has gotten me where I've gotten today. And when I was in college, people always talk about make those connections, build those relationships, and you hear about it, and it's a lot of work production is time consuming. But some of them have really come through, and it was worth the time and effort that I ended up putting into it. So I'll talk about kind of how those play out through each of my careers, because they had a big role in getting me into the sports industry. And it's just a great quote about connections. And I would change business to everything and everything. The world is small. The sports industry is even smaller. So, every time you can make connections, it's just great to build those relationships and maintain those throughout. So during my time at UND, I needed an internship. So I ended up getting an internship with the Philadelphia Flyers out in Philadelphia. But I was able to secure that through one of my professors. I went to his office hours for help one day and saw he had a Philadelphia Flyers poster on his wall, which kind of got the conversation going of the fact that I wanted to work in the NHL someday. And he was from Philadelphia, Pulitzer Prize winner. And he's like, hey, I know the PR guy for the Flyers. You want me to call him? So I was like, yeah, let's start that relationship right now. So he made a call. I got an interview, and I ended up landing a full-time job out there for my senior year, which was awesome. And I'll kind of dive a little bit more into that. And following that internship, I came back to North Dakota, where I worked for the Bakken and UAS magazine. So obviously not sports. It was a little harder to get into sports, even though I had a lot of experience and made some of those connections. But I was able to secure a job where I was able to write, do some digital and social media, which actually was a really good learning experience for me. I was there for about a year and a half, and then I got a job working as a digital and social media manager at the American Hockey League headquarters, which is out in Springfield, Massachusetts. So we oversaw all the league flagship accounts and the 30 teams that made up the league. And then after 2 years there, I made the jump out of sports and into the higher ed realm, where I currently am. And I actually just got promoted from social media manager to director of digital content and strategy. So while I was at the Flyers, there were two of us that were like the full game night, the full-time PR interns. And we were in charge of doing all the stuff for the press box. So we created all the media guides, all the game notes, clips, credentials, any materials that we needed for Flyers TV. And we did interviews. So we also were pulling, the different stars of the game and working with the players, bringing them to the interview spots, translating all of that. We also had a 10-person part-time staff that we managed. And we, gave them assignments. We worked the press box, made sure all the press had everything they needed, and just did general media relations on game days. So did that for 6 months while I was there. And then when I moved back to North Dakota, like I said, I worked at the Bakken magazine. Like I said, it was really hard to break into the sports industry. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. So I did spend some time, like I said, writing and doing some social media with the Bakken and UAS magazines. Really getting to hone in on my writing skills, which I think played a really big part in some of the classes I took in communication. I took a lot of journalism classes while I was there. So I was really poised to have a job secured right after I graduated. I did notice that they didn't have a strong social presence, and we wanted to launch the Unmanned Aircraft System magazine, which was a digital platform. So I really got their social media strategy started and kind of off the ground and really running. And that's kind of how I started my social career. So after that, I did a short stint at the Alumni Association, where one of my connections actually came back and started working as the VP over there for communications. And I had been dying to work with him for years because we had been in contact since I was a freshman at UND. And so he hired me on as soon as he got into that role. So I was there for about 4 months as their digital and social person before I got offered a position with the American Hockey League. And this was a dream come true. Being able to develop the digital and social strategy for an entire league, creating graphics, digital assets. We got to cover the All-Star games and help put those on, the Calder Cup playoffs. We were a team of 15 people at the headquarters, and people don't realize that. So we were all hands in. and all hands on deck for everything to do with the league. So we also did social and digital best practices for our 30 AHL teams across the league. And I started up their communication internship program just because I knew how important that was for me to get started. And we really, A, needed the help, but B, I wanted to be able to help other students who are, looking to break into the hockey industry as well. I spent about 2 years with the American Hockey League, and something about the American Hockey League is that none of the games are broadcasted. So it was my charge to kind of clip every game, watch every game, cut highlights, post them on our digital platforms. So as you can imagine, that gets to be a lot. So that's kind of why I decided to make the transition out of sports. I wasn't necessarily loving hockey at the time because I was putting in like 80 hours a week, and I wish I was exaggerating on that. So I did make the transition back to higher ed because of my stint with the Alumni Association at UND. And then just my experience with all my internships at UND kind of really made me want to jump back into that. So headed over to the University of Connecticut, where I was able to just have a lot of growth opportunities. I was the first social media manager that they've ever had. So I really got to lay the groundwork. I got to make best practices. I was able to establish policy at the university, was able to really connect and work with all of our different colleges and departments, and just really grow there. I manage a team of social media content producers. And as of late, we got a new president 2 years ago. So that was a fun experience where we got to get him on social media and really set the strategy for his digital presence. But that's kind of where I'm at today. I also oversee all of our news content at the university. So anything that gets pushed out in e-newsletters, email blasts, any of that comes directly through my shop and my team. So I like to say it set the stage early with my time at UND, but really couldn't have asked for a better experience. And UND really set me up, like I said, with some of those connections to kind of bridge that gap and get back into the sports industry and then to come out of the sports industry. So happy to answer any questions at the end of all of this. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Now, Hunter, if you want to share your presentation here.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a tough one to follow, Emily. Nice job. But like Keaton mentioned, my name's Hunter Plant. If I look bad, it's because we had a game day today, so we're still at softball and baseball right now, so got time away from that. But I work at the University of Minnesota Crookston. I oversee our marketing in athletics and do some assistant sports information as well. From Erskine, Minnesota. So I kind of stayed along the Highway 2 corridor here, and I ended up at University of North Dakota. I'll get into that later, but and then now I'm at the University of Minnesota Crookston, which I've been at for 2 years now. So I love my job, and I'll get into it a little bit here right now. So just quickly, why I chose the University of North Dakota. I was a big sports fan ever since I could walk, really ever since I was born. My parents always say I had a ball in my hand when I was born, so I kind of fell in love with the idea of having my profession be in sports. I grew up a UND fan, and my mom always says I went to my first UND game when I was 4 months old. Not sure if that's true or not, but we'll go with it. Both my grandparents worked at the University of North Dakota for over 30 years, about a combined 70 years. So I bled green and white, as they say. It was close to home. And my best friend was going to UND, which also helped there. And I just knew it was a great communication program with great professors. I'll kind of echo off of what Emily said. It's about the connections you make. And I made a lot of really good connections while I was at the University of North Dakota, which actually helped me land my job that I have today. So this is a presentation that I kind of gave to Dr. Lee's class. Just these are some helpful courses. These are courses that really helped me today, especially the public relations courses that I took. It just helped me with my job to kind of learn how to be a sports writer and how to kind of get social media things and how to have a good strategy for what I do now. So these are the courses that I took. I'm sure some of these have changed since I was there. It seems like I was there 10 years ago, but it's only been 3 years. So it hasn't been too long, but these are some courses that if I were to kind of tell a student going into the communications studies at UND, this is the courses that I would take because they help me so much in my field. And I'm sure Emily and Peter can kind of echo off what I'm saying here. Just these courses were so helpful. And I really got a good guidance from a lot of people in the communications department. So these are some courses I wish I would have taken while at UND. Audio production and broadcasting, I wish I would have taken that because I will be the first to admit, not very good at audio production and editing a lot of sound bites. So I wish I would have taken that. And then just a lot of these courses are involving creative content, so graphics, videos, things of that nature. I just wish I would have stuck with them and taken them, but I learned early on in the courses that I probably wasn't very good at them. So I decided to kind of drop out, but I really wish I would have taken them. And then the biggest course I wish I would have taken is sports communication, because I always tell people that sports communication, you're always learning. My job, I don't know if Peter or Emily's job is the same day to day, but my job really changes on a daily basis. So just to kind of learn the sports communication field would have been really nice for me, and to kind of learn how to be a writer and social media and stuff like that for a collegiate athletics program, or just really any sports field. So this is your everyone's favorite professor, Dr. Lee, right there. What UND did for me is, I always say, it built me for my career. I wouldn't be the professional I am today without UND, because I made such great connections. Like I mentioned, Dr. Lee, one of them. He just helped me get on the path of what I wanted to do. And it was just so good for me to kind of learn the different parts of it. I learned advertising, marketing, social media, just so many things I learned while at the University of North Dakota that really helped me become the professional that I am today. When I first got to UND, I kind of wanted to be a news writer, sports news writer. Then I realized that my first year I worked for the Dakota Student. I just realized that wasn't for me. I didn't like it as much. I like to kind of be in a program, be in a collegiate athletics program like I am today. So it helped me gain confidence that I was doing the right thing. I kind of switched to strategic communications my sophomore year, and it's the best decision I ever made, because I think if I was a news writer right now for a newspaper or whatever, I wouldn't be as happy as I am in my job. And that's not saying that someone else can't be happy being a news writer, but I found the passion for me, and it took me a little bit, but I found it, and I'm so thankful that it did. So I worked for Paul Ralston and UND Radio. I also did some things with UND Sports Information while at UND, which really helped me to get to University of Minnesota Crookston. And then finally, and most importantly, it just built lifelong relationships with friends and professors. I still talk to so many people in the communications department, and just really not the communications department, I guess just the whole university as a whole. And a lot of professors I can still gain guidance from, and learn a lot from them as well. Because if I'm ever struggling with something, I know that they'll always be there for me, and that's what really stands out to me about the University of North Dakota. So this is me the day I got hired. Obviously, like I mentioned, I'm an assistant marketing and communications director. People kind of ask me what my day-to-day is, and I don't really know what to tell them, because it changes on a daily basis. Like Monday I could be doing game notes for our softball team, and then the next I could be working on a video for our baseball team. It just changes on a daily basis, but I think that's the thing that I love most about my job. But my big job is marketing our athletics program. So on a weekly basis, I sit down with our coaches. Obviously, it's changed now due to COVID. But I sit down with our coaches and say, hey, what's our strategies for this week? What are some things you want to implement into these games, whether they're halftime games and things like that. I manage our sports website along with our head sports information director. Game management is what I'm doing today at our softball game. A little windy, so if my hair's a little bad, that's my fault. The wind's fault, actually. I'll blame the wind for that one. Sports information, probably my favorite part of the job. Doing game stories, game notes, and previews, and then social media as well. So having a good social media strategy is part of my job as well. And then at a small college, there's only 7 of us in the athletics department handling duties. Where at UND, there's probably double that, maybe even triple that. So I just do random duties as well. So last slide here, just to kind of wrap things up, pros and cons about my job. I get to watch sports for a living. And like I mentioned at the beginning of it, that's what I wanted to do. I knew very early on that I wanted to work in sports, just not sure what I wanted to do to work in sports, but I found my calling, I think, and I'm really thankful for it. The people I work with are great. And then the best part to me, one of the best parts is getting to know the student athletes. You create really good relationships with the student athletes because, you can be there for them and, they can come talk to you and you can help them with their path as well. Kind of like what the UND did for me. You can help them with their path as well. And then I get to learn and do new things every day. Like I fully believe that when I started my job in January 2019, I wasn't very good at it probably. And I think a lot of people would say that about their job. There's just so much to learn when it comes to your job. And the best part about my job is nothing's the same. And I'm learning new stuff day in, day out. And I think that's the great thing about it. Some cons is, my age. I'm 23 years old, going to be 24 in a few weeks, excuse me. So it's tough in a collegiate athletic program with so many coaches that are twice your age to, have different ideas and try to come to them with different ideas because, something that is popular in my age obviously wasn't important in their age or popular in their age. So that's tough. It's tough to gain respect just around the, the collegiate in our conference. It's tough to gain respect. Long hours. I always tell people collegiate athletics or any athletics field, sporting communication field, you're going to learn, you're going to enter. You need to be able to work long hours. If you don't like working weekends, long hours, sometimes I'm here from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's just what it is, and I love it. But if you don't love it, it's probably not the thing for you. And then it's a small college, but I've learned to love it. I kind of said this last year in Dr. Lee's class. It was a small college, but I've learned to love it, and it's just a really good fit for me right now. And yeah, so that was kind of my journey while at UND and the pros about and my job as well. So I hope I did a decent job following up Emily, and I really appreciate Keaton and the entire communications department for having me. And like Emily, really glad to answer questions at the end here.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Hunter. And then I'll turn it to Peter here if you want to present your slides there.
Definitely. Everybody sees the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
All right, let me go full screen here. Great. Hunter, did you say you're 24?
I am, yes, 24. Yep.
That hurt right here. You're doing great for yourself, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you.
Keaton, thanks for having me. Dr. Lee, this is a great event. Thank you for having us on here. I'm definitely proud to be here speaking right now, and I'm happy to be reconnected with my alma mater here. If I at all go off of the slideshow a little bit here, please don't blame me. I put a little bit too much detail in here at some points. It's gonna probably vary from my notes every once in a while here. My name is Peter Bottini. I'm a 30-year-old Hunter, 30-year-old social media manager at the NHL. I work out of Midtown Manhattan. I currently live in Hoboken, New Jersey, which was definitely an awakening for somebody coming from Grand Forks, North Dakota, that's for sure. Today, I'm calling my little presentation here, Everything Will Be Okay, Even If It Doesn't Feel Okay Right Now, because that's something I was able to take away from my journey, and I think that it's something that we should definitely be reminded of every once in a while. If your compass points true north and you tie in enthusiasm with work ethic, everything is going to work out in the end. There's a lot of turmoil in the world right now. It would be so easy to use that as an excuse, but the most important thing is to ask yourselves, what are you doing right now to stand out? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences that led to where I am in my current role. And I think, I really think you're going to find that it was a lot of luck, a little bit of hard work, but mostly a ton of kindness, generosity, and trust from a bunch of different people. So I was raised in Sartell, Minnesota, but I really came to life when I arrived at UND in 2009 as a freshman. I began to explore school a little bit. I found a group of people who would become the main characters in my collegiate story. I got my internship at the athletics department. Man, look at some of those photos. Those are at times very cringy and hard to take. I'm sure a lot of you can agree. So at this place, I got a chance working with a lot of these people to do something that I was never allowed to do in my parents' house, and that was to fail. A piece of advice for all of you: don't fail. It seems very obvious, right? But you'll be surprised at how easy it is to accept that after it happens the first time. This led to the chance to create something cool with a few special people. I was given a chance by Jason Haju, who you've heard mentioned a couple times here. I got to work with a guy named Matt Schill, who's still at the university. And by the way, they're both graduates of the UND Communications program. And then, of course, I took on this show called Through These Doors, a small web series with my co-student intern, David Folsky, and he's a very good friend to this day. He and I worked tirelessly to produce a very informal web series, but it was brand new at the time. Back in 2011, I think, is when we first did that. The show was written, shot, and edited by David and I, and Matt and Jason were there as guides, but mostly they were there to give us the freedom to explore something new. This little 5-minute web series is now in its 10th season and has become a staple of hockey season around campus. And that's something that I shamelessly go and check on every single season on the UND digital channels. So I left school with kind of a hunger, not gonna lie. I bounced around between a few entry-level jobs. I broke off from my education for a brief year to intern with the Minnesota Twins. After school, I moved out to New York. I took a sales job at Yelp. It was the hardest, most challenging, and worst job I've ever worked at in my life. I don't regret it. It wasn't a fit at all, but it still played into the cumulative experience that I own kind of today. And then I worked 2.5 years in minor league hockey. Actually, Emily on this call, she was a voice for me when I was looking for a new opportunity, and she recommended me, and I was given a chance in minor league hockey. But these were some long 2 years. Emily can attest to that. Minor league hockey is not easy. It beats you up, it grinds you down, and if you stick with it, you're bound for better things, as she can attest to as well in her role at UConn. In 2018, I was hired into my current role as a social media manager at the NHL. My approach to this job has been similar to the mindset that I had at UND. I maintained a relatively high level of enthusiasm, excitement, and openness to new experiences. And that, of course, opened doors to new experiences in 2020. I was given a new opportunity when the world almost stopped. The Stanley Cup playoffs almost didn't happen. The NHL came to me as well as several others who had proven that they can handle new experiences and new challenges. And I was shipped away basically to a voluntary prison in Edmonton, Canada, which was one of 2 hubs where the Stanley Cup playoffs would be played out. This slide is literally nothing to gain from this slide. I just want you to see that I got hit by a puck in the chest during the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I ended up on broadcast here, which if you're working at an event is never a good thing. You don't want to be on TV. But as you see there, a slap shot deflected off of a player, went through a hole and left a pretty considerable mark on my chest there as I was taking video of the game. Never see that happen. The ref didn't hesitate to get out of the way. What a guy. So when I'm not isolated in Canada, I'm usually in a cubicle, like I said, in Midtown Manhattan. I get to manage the NHL's relationships with Sportsnet, NBC, and as you may have seen recently, the NHL signed a new rights deal for 10 years, or I'm sorry, for 7 years with ESPN, which is a a tremendous opportunity to get to work with the biggest broadcaster of sports on TV as well as on social media. Let's flip over to the other half of my responsibilities, which is a program within the NHL called Hockey is for Everyone. It literally means that I get to try to grow fandom among a new and diverse representation of sports fans and hockey fans, and I get to make the game more welcoming and more inclusive, which is something that anybody has to love who's involved with sports. We all remember the first time we fell in love with a sport. Well, I get to try to find ways to do that for new fans. I love where I've ended up and what the future looks like in this job. I've had the chance to recently roll out a ton of really fun creative for social media to drive viewership to those broadcasts of NBC and Sportsnet and ESPN. This is an example of something that we actually just published today. If you go to the NHL's Instagram, you can go take a look at this and everybody's critical feedback of my work, which is always something that you have to kind of get used to on social media. Everybody's an expert and they're all critics. So I'm going to wrap this up now, but I'll leave you with a sincere statement that this wouldn't have been possible if it were not for my experience at UND. I took advantage of some opportunities, definitely, but if you're a current student or a prospective one, open your eyes to new opportunities. You're going to hear many people on these panels repeat this over and over again. Never say no to something new and possibly fun, because you're never sure where it's going to lead. If we ever have the chance to interact, don't hesitate to reach out. I love meeting people from North Dakota, from Minnesota, from the University of North Dakota. My email is always open. My door is always open. So never hesitate to reach out. If you're a current student or, like I said, a prospective high school student, good luck with everything. I wish you nothing but the best. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Peter, and Hunter and Emily as well. Those were some great presentations. So now we're just going to head into a little couple questions here. The first one that we were asked, what experiences did you guys feel were most influential in getting you into your current position?
I can go first. Specifically in college, working on Through These Doors, getting told that something major needed to be overhauled with an episode about a half hour before we were supposed to publish it. That prepared me for a lot of rejection, a lot of panicking, and figuring out and problem solving. Especially in my role, specifically, not all roles that you hear from today, but my role, there's a lot of that. And it doesn't end just because you're at the NHL or University of Minnesota Crookston or UConn. It's gonna be there throughout you in your career, and you need to be able to stay calm and adjust and figure out a solution.
Yeah, I can kind of piggyback off Peter. For me, it was just my internship with UMC in 2018 really helped me a lot, because like Peter said, there's mistakes that are going to be made, and you'd rather have yourself learn from them and not make that mistake again. Because I know in my job right away in my internship, they really tasked me with a lot of hard jobs, and I did them, and there were some mistakes, but I think that really helped me to where I am in my full-time job right now. So I think just my internship in the summer of 2018 really helped me out a lot. And again, it was making mistakes in my internship that I think were key to helping me in my full-time job right now.
Adding to that too, being able to get uncomfortable with situations, that was a big lesson to learn right after college. But got that experience obviously at the athletic department, but probably in my role with the Philadelphia Flyers, we got thrown into just leading the charge with very little direction, working with professional players, professional media, and just really being okay with not knowing that what you're doing and kind of just going and learning as you're going. But being uncomfortable, as cliche as it sounds, is really good, and not being afraid to fail or to mess up or to get close to failing, as Peter would say. So
awesome. And then another question, so where is the best place that you guys would recommend kind of beginning your job search in the sports industry? I know there's so many teams and leagues, stuff like that. So where would you guys kind of recommend starting that out?
So I can go first. I mean, I think like Peter said, there's so many, don't kind of limit yourself to one. I would say I got lucky enough to be able to find a full-time job right out of college, right out of graduation. I know a lot of people sometimes aren't lucky with that, with whatever field there is. Like Peter said, he was a salesman for Yelp. Like that's, but that led him to what he is. But I was lucky enough. But I would say just kind of maybe limit to 5 or whatever, 5 or 10, but definitely don't limit yourself to those options. But maybe Peter and Emily have something else. But that's what I would say. Don't kind of set your sights on something, because it's such a dog eat dog world where there's a lot that could happen. So kind of, don't limit yourself, I guess, what I'm saying.
Yeah, I have 60 resumes that I sent out when I was done with college. So not to, be the Debbie Downer here, but it wasn't easy. And I thought I had enough experience. And like I said, I went outside of the sports realm for a couple of years, but to get back in it was those connections. I still was applying to different websites and different jobs that I saw come up, but it ultimately was some of those connections. My connections with the Flyers is what got me he's best friends with the PR guy in Springfield at the AHL. So he was able to make that connection for me and help me get that job. So really honing in on those connections it is important, on top of, vigorously applying to every job you see as well.
A website called Teamwork Online is where you go to find all the openings in sports. Start there. But as these two have already mentioned, have a balance. Don't take it as the end of the world because you don't get a job, because you're probably not going to get the first job you apply for. Approach it with cool and calm tranquility at times.
Awesome. Yeah. And like Peter said, Teamwork Online, I've seen a lot of positions on there, as well as the NCAA job market. And then there's also accounts on Twitter where you can find positions as well. So a question from the chat box, who do you find yourself working with the most outside of your immediate team members? And who are your resources that kind of help you out in your current roles?
Happy to jump on that one. So a lot of the people I still connect with are people from the communication department from UND that I made, because we're all kind of in the same role, where no one is probably doing the same job as you, but it's great to be in different fields, to bounce ideas off of each other, and really understand the position you're in and what you're trying to accomplish. Communication is communication, so they get what you're trying to accomplish, and it's just nice to have some fresh eyes. But also it's, I've made resources and relationships in mentors. I can't say enough about some of the mentors that I've created, and I will go to mentors that I made back in at UND and just kind of reach out to them and be like, hey, we're in this tough position, or we have the opportunity to hire for this. Like, what do you recommend I go after? Or who do you think we should, how do you think we should approach a situation? So really looking into people who are also, on the same realm. Twitter is great. Like, I've made so many relationships on Twitter of people who are in the sports industry that we're Twitter friends, and I've never met them in real life, but I will DM them every time I have a question, or, we bounce ideas or good things and bad things off of each other. So never underestimate the power of social media too.
That's a tough question, honestly, for me to answer. I made the most of my relationships at UND. For example, Emily was a great friend of mine during our internship, and she was the reason I got the job in Springfield in the minor league hockey. And she doesn't let me forget about that either. But sometimes those connections you make in a college town like that only go so far. It's up to you, like Emily said, to drive relationships. I met my current boss because I literally crept his LinkedIn page. He was annoyed at how many times I made outreaches. But also, like, in your current role, when you're not looking for a new job, you're looking to just get better at what you're doing. I got to be honest, and this might not be true for a lot of people, I go to my family a lot. I see that we have a proud father here in Zoom, which is great. Welcome. That's amazing. And keep those people close, as they're always a resource, and sometimes your toughest but truest critics. And so I think it's going to vary case by case. I would say just keep those relationships strong.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, my boss is actually, I'm from a hometown of 530 people. So I everyone knows everyone, and my AD is actually from my hometown. My boss is from my hometown. So I was lucky enough to kind of get that connection with her. But the first question, who do you find yourself working with? It's a lot of our conference, it's a lot of SIDs from St. Cloud State, Minnesota State, Mankato, whoever it is, just working with them and kind of nailing in on things like that. But yeah, it's a lot. Obviously, with sports information, I work a lot with the outside and a lot of coaches and things like that. So I think that hopefully that answers your question, but the connections that I had leading up were really important. And they are actually resources that I lean on today too as well.
And I'd like to add too, I was always surprised at how random connections are always willing to help you out. You never know what kind of response you're going to get. All you can do is ask and show genuine curiosity and enthusiasm. I had never met Dave St. Peter. I knew he was a UND grad, and he was a past intern of the UND athletics department. And so one day I reached out to him, and he and I have kept up communication throughout the years. And so you never know what you're going to get. Don't hesitate. As long as you're sincere and authentic, it should go over well.
Awesome, great responses. And we just have two more questions here. Hunter, you still live pretty close to UND, so this might be more directed to Emily and Peter, but in a field that kind of required you guys to move far away from campus at UND, were you like excited to adventure, or did you have to kind of talk yourself into moving out of your comfort zone?
I can go first, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I think Emily can speak almost exactly the same to this, is that it's crazy living in Grand Forks for as long as you do throughout school and then trying to go somewhere else, East Coast. There's honestly not a lot of ties that go outside of the Midwest. I'll never forget the first time I moved to New York. I was flying in over Central Park and I saw how many people were in this massive park and I panicked. I almost lost it right there and went home. It takes a lot of sleepless nights to talk yourself into staying there, keeping course and trying to track down what you set out for. It's not easy, but if you have a strong internal voice, it's possible.
Yeah, I had the same experience. Moving to Philly was the scariest thing I've ever had to do. I was 21 and have never left North Dakota. Like, that is terrifying for anyone, but it's what you needed to do to pursue your career and your dream job. So you just kind of do it. And honestly, it was the best thing. I had a harder time moving back to North Dakota after living on the East Coast and in a city. I think that was more of an adjustment for me. So when the opportunity came to move back to the East Coast, that was more exciting. But, I'd be remiss to say that, it is tough and it is hard, to make friends in a different setting like that, where the East Coast is a completely different ballgame than the Midwest. Like there's no nice people out here. Like, what you have to figure out how to interact with different people out here. But I can't say enough of good things about them. So that was a really hard part of separating my work life and trying to make sure I had some time to meet people. So I mean, sports didn't offer a lot of free time like that, but in the free time I had, I was able to join different organizations and kind of immerse myself. So it made me more comfortable.
Awesome. And then our last question here, Hunter, if you could just kind of highlight the benefits of working in like a college department where you can cover many sports. And then Peter, if you could kind of highlight focusing on one sport. And then Emily, I know you worked with the Flyers, so that's one sport, or like a league as a whole in the AHL. So you just kind of summarize that.
Yeah, so I can kind of go first here. It's only me and another guy as sports information. So we are pretty much every day kind of focusing on different sports. We kind of do have our general sports that we will kind of be the main contact, quote unquote, for. So, softball, basketball, and, now we added hockey, which is another thing. But I think the benefit of that is just getting to know all the student athletes and stuff for me is a really cool thing. Getting to know the coaches and working with them to, market and promote their program as best we can. And, for a small college, it's a lot different than, a UConn or a Duke or a Syracuse, because, you pretty much have one SID for one sport, and that's pretty much it. Where here it's one guy and maybe 8 sports that they're covering or something like that. So I think just the biggest benefit is getting to do different things on a daily basis in here in at Minnesota Crookston. I think, and like I've mentioned before, that's the best part about my job. So that's just a huge benefit, is the connections that I've made with all the coaches, players, and things like that.
I'm sorry, Keaton. Was it the benefits or the challenges of working in a league?
The benefits, but if you could, I mean, if you think it's more of a challenge too, I could certainly see that as well.
Well, I get to do this coming from a minor league team where honestly I left because I was feeling a little bit antsy because I felt like the ideas and the work that I was doing there was a little bit too narrow scoped. At the league, I get to think of big picture ideas, very broad ideas and pieces of content that are meant to touch fans in every single market around North America. There are some challenges because we are considered one of the 4 sports leagues in America. But if you go to the Instagram of the NBA, you'll see that they have 55 million followers and we have 4.5 million followers. And so at times you're often expected by both fans as well as people in your own company to produce the work at the level of a brand that you're just not the same as. But that opportunity is always there, and it's you have to step back and realize that it's a blessing to be considered in the same conversation as a brand that large, because it almost pushes you, it drives you to be better and to do work of that quality. It's really what I love about working here. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we're about to enter into a new rights deal with ESPN, so they're going to be our business partners. They're going to be there with us every step of the way. And I'm really excited to see and learn from a brand that big to see how we can get better. Just those new opportunities is absolutely my favorite part of this job.
And ironically, I kind of almost had the opposite of what Peter experienced. I worked for the team and then I worked for the league, but the team, there was just that thrill of game night. And there's just nothing that beats that rush. You're working 18-hour days, but 1 a.m. comes and you're just okay, 7 a.m. let's go again and let's do it again. There's just absolutely nothing like it. So going to a league where you didn't have those games and you went home and you watched the games online and you're oh, okay. It was fun and it was rewarding in its own self, but I really just valued being able to work with a team and just promote one specific team and just really hone in on that. So I think that was a really big push and benefit for, just working on the team level. But the league level was great too. You got to work with so many people. And like I said, you're helping the teams get better and develop more and really push them to better and put those expectations on them. So on the flip side, I can kind of see that, there's more opportunities. But with the challenges, at least with the AHL, with having such a small team, I felt like I maxed out my career after 2 years there, just because digital content necessarily wasn't a top priority at the time. We were more into securing TV deals and stuff like that. So that kind of pushed me. I knew I either needed to go back to a team or pick a different career field. So that's kind of why I made the jump back to higher ed.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those great responses. So that'll wrap up our sports communication panel here. So I would just like to thank you all for attending our annual Communication Appreciation Day event sponsored by Northwestern Mutual. We hope that you found our event to be educational and inspirational. In a year where COVID canceled a lot of things, we're happy to be able to bring this event to you virtually and feature some of our outstanding UND communication department alumni. We featured a lot of stuff today, starting out with journalism, event planning, marketing and sales, advertising, public relations, social media advertising and management, all the way to health communication and sports communication. So I know that's a lot there, but it just kind of shows the unique fields you can go into with this major and how valuable and flexible that can be. High school students, just one last reminder to check out that scholarship opportunity. And lastly, thank you to all of our panel speakers today for sharing your knowledge and experience. If any students or attendees have any further questions, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us through email or LinkedIn or social media as well. So thank you all for attending and enjoy the rest of your weekend.